One man standing. Despite the global outcry over corruption allegations within FIFA, President Sepp Blatter heads for re-election for another 4 years. But could Blatter really be the man to rebuild FIFA's tainted image? Or does the multi-million-dollar corporation need an entire overhaul? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Jane Dutton. Crisis? What crisis? At this stage, it doesn't seem that anyone is prepared to show FIFA President Sepp Blatter the red card. FIFA's Congress has decided that the incumbent president will stand for re-election unopposed. But the reputation of football's governing body is at an all-time low. Corruption scandals plague the organisation. Allegations of bribe for votes led to the suspension of Jack Warner, FIFA's vice president, and Mohammed bin Hammam, Blatter's only rival for the presidency. And suggestions that Qatar bought the World Cup, accusations they strenuously deny, have led to calls for a full investigation into the 2022 World Cup vote. But this is not the first time that claims of corruption within FIFA have surfaced. In the last year alone, in October 2010, an undercover operation by Britain's Sunday Times revealed 2 members of FIFA's executive committee offered to sell their votes in the 2018 and 2022 World Cup bid campaign. In the same month, it was alleged that Spain, Portugal and Qatar could face expulsion amid accusations they were colluding to buy votes. Then in December, as Russia and Qatar were awarded the World Cup, the Swiss government said it would investigate vote-selling allegations within FIFA. In February this year, Sepp Blatter confirmed that the Qatar and Spain-Portugal World Cup bidding teams colluded to trade votes in the contest for the 2018 and 2022 finals. But despite demands from the English Football Association and Transparency International to postpone the June 1st election, Sepp Blatter and FIFA remain defiant, and it is going ahead. So let's discuss what's really going on here and the impact Blatter's stance is likely to have on the world's most popular game. We have 3 guests from Zurich, the site of the FIFA Congress: Mehrdad Massoudi, producer of the programme Football Mondial and former media press officer for the FIFA World Cup in 1998. From London, David Owen, chief columnist for InsideWorldFootball.biz, a website dedicated to football, business and politics. And from Washington, D.C., Grant Wall, senior writer at Sports Illustrated. Grant was the only other candidate to express interest in running for FIFA presidency. Gentlemen, welcome all of you. Massoudi, you are in the thick of the action there in Zurich. I'm going to ask you to speculate because by the time we go to air, the result is still not known. What do you think is going to happen? What should happen?
It's safe to say that Sepp Blatter will be elected for a 4th term. 83% voted against the English FA proposal to postpone the election, which is again safe to assume the majority of those 83% would vote in favor of Sepp Blatter. And in terms of what should happen, it's a question that I think should be posed to Blatter himself. He, having worked in FIFA since 1975, knows very well whatever he does within the next 4 years, he will be judged based on that, not on the past 35 years or 36 years. By 2015, when he leaves FIFA, people will only remember the last 4 years, especially with all the controversies surrounding this election.
OK, Mr. Wall, do you still wish that you were in the running, you were interested in this job?
Of course. I tried very hard to get a formal nomination by the April 1st deadline that was required if I was going to be a formal candidate. And I spoke to 150 different FAs around the world, probably about 24 FAs with some seriousness who are interested in talking to me, and was not able to get that nomination. And that was in large part because they had a tremendous fear of what would happen in retribution if they nominated me publicly. So that gives you an idea of how closed FIFA is and how difficult it is to unseat anyone in power, in part because there are no term limits.
So Blatter's here to stay, in your view?
I think he is. He'll win the election. He's the only candidate. I would like to say that the corruption charges and investigations that have been announced over the last week might signal a change in FIFA's attitude toward corruption in its own ranks. But right now, it's really hard to tell. Right now, it could just be internal politics allowing Sepp Blatter to stand alone in this election.
Mr. Owen, do you agree that this should be going ahead? I mean, shouldn't there have been more of a reformist type of candidate? I'm not sure if that was Mr. Wall or somebody else, to come through and to try and bring some reform from outside FIFA.
Yeah, I think there should. I think it's a great shame no association was prepared to nominate Grant or another reform candidate. I think it's also a great shame that the FA, the English FA, left it until this late to speak up. I mean,
why did they do that? I mean, they've clearly been angered for a long time. Why the delay?
Yeah, well, you need to ask them. I mean, the FA has got problems of its own, and one of its problems is that on issues that really, really matter, it finds it very hard to reach agreement on what to do itself. So maybe that has something to do with it. I just think it's a shame that they left it until now to speak out.
So do you think what's happening at the moment is purely an internal game to keep Blatter in power? And if he is going to be nominated back for another 4 years, does this suggest, I mean, can we suggest that possibly everybody benefits by Blatter being in power, whether it's by accepting bribes or not?
Well, Blatter's big problem is going to be that for the first year, 2 years, who knows, nobody's going to take him seriously. Nobody believes what he's going to say. He's going to have to show, he's going to have to act to back up his words, because people will just otherwise shrug it off. The one thing that I think has changed that gives some ground for hope is that he's not running again, so he doesn't have to worry about survival. In the 13 years he's been president, he's had to expend an awful lot of energy just making sure that he stays as president. Well, he's not going to have to do that anymore, and he's also, knowing him a little bit, I think he's going to be very, very worried about the legacy he leaves. And if FIFA's image doesn't improve, the legacy he leaves is going to be catastrophic.
Mr. Masudi, do you agree with that? Do you think that Blatter could spend this time, if he is indeed voted in, and cleaning his name, cleaning up the name of FIFA?
Surely. As David mentioned, he doesn't have to cater to the needs of certain associations, confederations, perhaps some of his colleagues on the executive committee, and will be spending more time on cleaning up the image of the game that has been tarnished the last few weeks and months. One thing that is in his favor, FIFA is made up of 208 associations, the majority of whom have benefited greatly the last 11, 12 years through a very well-organized project called Goal Project. If you go to Sri Lanka, previously the national federation offices were underneath the terraces of a very run-down stadium. Now, through this project, through the distribution of TV money, so all these smaller associations who have the same vote as the associations, the FA, Germany, Brazil, see some sort of legacy already of the Blatter era, his presidency. So he has those people already in his camp. Now he has to make sure the bigger associations will remember him fondly. And apart from Grant, I think there was another 64-year-old former player who wanted to be a candidate, Elias Figueroa. And if English Association was serious, he was a former player from within the game, highly respected in South America, and I think there was an English organization who put his name forward. All he needed, just one nomination. And as David mentioned, the FA left it up to 48 hours before the election to set forth a proposal that was defeated by 83% in favor of Blatter, basically.
OK, let's bring in Bim Hammam from Qatar, Mr. Wall, because we've just brought up some details there. He's accused of selling each vote for $40,000. We know what's happened to him in the last week or so, and the fact that he wasn't allowed into the Congress, or he wasn't allowed to appear in Zurich. What do you think is going to be made of him? Is he going to be used as some sort of example in cleaning up FIFA?
Well, the question I have is, Bin Hammam agreed to withdraw his candidacy on his own on Saturday night, and I wonder if he has made a deal with Blatter that he might get something in return for doing that,
like
whether that is
think?
a slap on the wrist in this investigation or whether Qatar is able to keep World Cup 22. I am very curious to see what happens now with Qatar's winning bid for the 22 World Cup, because at this point, the evidence that we're seeing is that Bin Hammam used cash bribes totaling nearly $1 million to try and buy votes from Caribbean countries for this election. And so if we're listening to what FIFA has said the last couple of days, it's that they think Bin Hammam used bribery in his challenge against Blatter, but Blatter has not said anything about what that means for Bin Hammam's role in Qatar's World Cup 22 winning bid.
Okay, let me just put some of those accusations.
We have to question that.
Okay. Mr. Owen, I mean, Bin Hammam responded by saying that Blatter knew all about the payments and that if he was guilty, so too was Blatter.
Yeah, I think that was just a fairly transparent attempt to bring Blatter into the ambit of the Ethics Committee, and it didn't really work because Blatter was not suspended in the way the others were. I think a lot depends on the strength of the evidence against Bin Hammam and Warner. We don't really know how strong it is yet. I agree with Grant. It looks and smells as if there might have been a deal. If the evidence is strong, Bin Hammam's bargaining power would not have been great. If the evidence is weaker, then you know, who knows? There's a parallel from 2002 when there was a very, very bad-tempered election campaign between Sepp Blatter and a candidate from Cameroon's Issa Hayatou, the head of the African Confederation. But Mr. Hayatou is still a member of FIFA. It's amazing how quickly, even after a remarkably bad-tempered campaign, people kissed and made up. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Bin Hammam continuing in much the same role after all this.
It does make you wonder why these investigations haven't been allowed to go ahead before this vote, why FIFA wasn't allowed to try and clean up these issues.
Well, again, it all came at the very last minute. We'll have to see how serious they are. I mean, they're announcing new measures to investigate issues that come up in future. We'll have to see whether what has happened or is alleged to have happened over the past few weeks gets covered by that, and whether the rules and regulations are tightened. I mean, I'm actually rather worried from the other perspective. I think we saw that in the contests for the 2018 and 2022 World Cup. I think the Ethics Committee actually worked rather well. There were, after all, 2 EXCO members suspended as a result of that. I'm going to be watching over the next year to make sure that these changes to the Ethics Committee regulations don't weaken it rather than strengthening it.
OK, now, this being a global game, the current crisis at FIFA has had fans across the world talking like most of us, and the allegations of corruption obviously don't sit very well. Al Jazeera's Gabriel Elizondo reports from Brazil, the country preparing to host the 2014 World Cup.
All over the world, they pack stadiums. Football, it's undoubtedly one of the world's most popular sports, often called the beautiful game. But now football fans around the world have been forced to confront the ugly side, as the world governing body FIFA is facing a growing series of allegations of corruption that have rocked the organization. It's grabbed fans' attention worldwide.
Corruption exists in FIFA. Corruption exists at all levels in politics and in sport. Politics and sport go hand in hand. Things don't change easily.
Everything is decided by a small group of people. The opportunity goes to whomever has the most money. It has nothing to do with who deserves it. Money decides everything.
Here in Brazil, this is a country where they love their football almost more than anywhere. And they're watching what's happening at FIFA very closely right now because they have a vested interest. Brazil will host the next World Cup in 2014.
FIFA's image has been tarnished. I have started to see FIFA in a negative way. I used to have more respect for FIFA, but now I have a worse image of the organization.
Ricardo Teixeira, the ultra-powerful head of the Brazilian Football Federation and FIFA board member, was reportedly planning to run for president of the organization in 2015. But his close ties to those people associated with the FIFA scandals have possibly dimmed that chance. He, like everyone else, denies any wrongdoing.
What is happening with Sepp Blatter seems similar to the situation of Ricardo Teixeira here in Brazil. It's kind of a mafia thing, and they do not leave. He's been head of Brazilian Football Federation for a lifetime. It's a mafia, and it smells bad.
Few are suggesting football itself will be ruined. Thanks likely to the game's good fortune and its global reach and popularity, it might just survive by being bigger than the body that runs it. Gabriel Azando, Al Jazeera, Sao Paulo.
Mr. Masudi, some angry fans there. Do you think that fans in general want to see FIFA being brought to their knees, being broken down?
It's a good question, and based on what has happened and people have heard around the world the last few weeks and months, I'll give you an example. Last night in Zurich, after a very long day, we finished our work and we arrived at our hotel. We had the accreditation, and some young people were standing there, and they thought we were FIFA officials because of our accreditation. It was only just for press. And they started talking in German, and I picked up their conversation, and I asked them in English, why are they angry with us? And they said, you guys have ruined our game and this and that. And these are young Swiss people. Swiss people are known for their level of civility and pacifism. And if these young Swiss people are angry, you can imagine how passionate football fans feel around the world. But to some extent I think this feeling is perhaps exaggerated. And I'm not defending FIFA by any stretch of imagination, but already at this Congress behind me, the voting procedure for future World Cup hosts have been suggested that it would change. It will go back to Congress. Not that it would not be controversial again, going back to 1938 when the World Cup was suggested to be staged in France. South Americans were up in arms, and Uruguay and Argentina boycotted that World Cup in France because they were under the impression that the World Cup would go back to South America after it had taken place in Italy. So there is always going to be some sort of controversy regardless, because if this game affects 208 countries around the world.
Okay, Mr. Owen, we've got you up there on the camera. What do you think? You touched on it briefly, but what do you think needs to be done? Some changes mentioned there by Mr. Masudi, but should FIFA go the same route as the IOC, for example, incredibly corrupt, viewed as being corrupt under Samaranch, really cleaned up its act? Is that the way it's got to go?
Yes and no. I mean, yes. I think one of the reasons the IOC has cleaned up his act, by the way, has nothing to do with procedures. It's just the state of mind of the people in charge. The last few years, whenever there's been the slightest question over the integrity of an IOC member, the IOC bosses have come down on these people like a ton of bricks and had proper investigations. And if the individuals were found to have done something wrong, they were booted out often or punished in some way. FIFA, I think one of FIFA's problems is the power in the hands of the 6 confederations, and it's very hard to break that down. A lot of Jack Warner and CONCACAF's power in the past has come because they have been very disciplined about block voting. They decide which way they're going to vote, and then everybody sticks to it. Now, in the World Cup election, that meant that 3 votes out of 22 voted together. If you extend the World Cup voting to every association, so there are 208 votes instead of 22, well, CONCACAF counts for 35 of those. And 35 out of 208 is actually a bigger proportion than 3 out of 22. So I'm not convinced that this idea of simply expanding the votership to 208 people is going to solve anything if nothing else changes.
Mr. Wall, because from the outside, and I claim to be one of those outsiders as far as football is concerned and FIFA is concerned, it looks like there have been so many corruption allegations and that people just keep getting rewarded within the company. So clearly something must change. I mean, is it up to the sponsors now? Because sponsors are getting angry. Governments are getting angry. Can they enforce some sort of change?
I don't think real reform is going to come from inside FIFA itself. It's had many years to do that, and it has not happened. And so you then have to ask, who has leverage over FIFA? And the sponsors certainly would be in that group. Companies like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Visa, Anheuser-Busch, they could have a big impact because they give a lot of money to FIFA. Also, the member associations, at this point, the biggest influence they could have is to leave FIFA, and nobody has really seriously threatened to do that yet at this point, even though the fans may want that in some cases.
Yeah,
and then you have governments.
So carry on.
The governments, like the Swiss government, could certainly investigate FIFA and hold it to a much higher standard as far as corruption.
What about other football associations leaving FIFA? I believe that's happened within boxing and darts, for example.
Right. It's something that if an FA was going to do that, England probably would be the one, and they don't seem like they're going to. So it's something that would probably be taking a real stand, and yet I don't think anyone's taking that all that seriously at this point. Let's
go back to the games. Mr. Owen, I know you write about this a lot, so I should imagine you get a lot of feedback. Do you think fans really care if Qatar or Russia are hosting the games and how they got the games? Don't they just want to go and have a good time?
I think to a large extent they do just want to go and have a good time. But, the social networks at the moment are absolutely full of football fans venting anger at FIFA. I think really the only reason the body's been able to get away with what it's done until now is because football has taken over the world in sporting terms. The industry in the last 20 years has grown absolutely exponentially, and as a result of that there's been great prosperity, and people perhaps haven't asked as many questions as they might have done and have done in other sports, which have been suffering because football's been monopolising so much. I think maybe Grant talked about points of leverage. Maybe one of those points of leverage will come when the football economy stops growing quite as vigorously as it has done over the past 20 years.
Yeah, because there's certainly a lot of money in there, isn't there? Mr. Masudi, how do you think that FIFA could rebrand itself? Because clearly that's something it needs to do now, other than what we've been discussing, cleaning up its act.
Obviously, sponsors have a lot to say, as Grant mentioned. Rebranding FIFA around the world, it basically starts from the World Cup itself. The majority of controversies around the World Cup, the biggest sporting event, the single sporting event in the world. And the next World Cup will be in Brazil, the one after will be in Russia, and the one that everyone is talking about is in Qatar. People should remember this game belongs to all corners of the world. I would like to ask people why the World Cup should not be in Qatar. People may bring up heat, humidity, different culture, but the fact that it is a different culture should be the reason for the World Cup to be held there. The World Cup has been in South Africa.
Germany is incredibly unhappy. Excuse me, jumping in there. The head of Germany's Football Federation said just today, Wednesday, that FIFA should re-examine the awarding of the 2022. I mean, is that likely to happen?
It could happen, but Germany itself had a controversial vote in July 2000 when they were awarded their hosting rights of the 2006 FIFA World Cup. One member of the FIFA Executive Committee abstained from voting, and that was the difference between South Africa hosting it and Germany hosting it. So, as I said, there's always been controversies around this. And now the World Cup being in the Middle East, the only region in the world the World Cup hasn't taken place, it could be a catalyst for change. The fact that Israeli athletes or Israeli reporters or Israeli referees could actually set foot on Middle Eastern soil for the first time.
Okay, Mehrdad Massoudi with those final words. Thank you for joining us. From Zurich, from London, David Owen, and from Washington, D.C., Grant Wall. Thank you, gentlemen, all three of you. That was very interesting. Of course, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye.